BDO is not a mainstream game, and I don't think it ever will become that unless they overcome this one thing which holds them back immensely. You have to grind at a part-time job worth of efficiency. I hope you have fun through that journey because apparently it's about the journey, not the destination. It is very rare to see an MMORPG stand the test of time. Honestly, only a handful of games ever made it past a few years and actually thrived or increased in player base. Namely, games like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, and also Black Desert Online. It may be a much smaller game and in a niche, but it did survive all this time. And mainly it's thanks to Pearl Abyss being willing to make frequent updates, quality of life changes, and try to improve the game over time. But despite that, BDO is not a mainstream game, and I don't think it ever will become that unless they overcome this one thing which holds them back immensely. That's right, it is gearing up to the end game. Now, we all heard the lines, hey, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but I call bullshit. It makes sense if you have that mindset when you're trying to improve yourself or getting something of tangible value out of the time you spent, but this is a video game. And at any moment, Pearl Abyss could just delete your account and wipe out your hundreds, if not 1,000 hours of grinding and effort you put into the game in just one move, right? So obviously that's not likely to happen, but it is possible. Now, it's okay if you just want to play this game casually, you have no intention of getting to the end game, you just want to have fun with your friends and just have a good time. This is a really in-depth game and a lot of things to do and something to really easily kill time on, right? By no means am I saying that's a bad thing or something wrong, but we can't ignore the sheer amount of hours it takes to gear up in this game. Now, you might argue, Pansy, listen, it's about having fun, and I agree. It is about having fun. You're playing a video game. You should be having fun. If you're not having fun, why are you playing, right? Well, the thing is, the entire game revolves around monotonous systems. So essentially, you're running in a circle, killing mobs. From level 1 all the way till the end game at 720 gear score, you're essentially running around in circles, killing mobs. I mean, that doesn't change. After like 50 hours or 100 hours, you can't help but feel kind of bored doing the same thing. But, you know, if you space yourself, if you, don't burn yourself out, you can continue to have fun. Now, that's an individual thing. It comes down to you. If you're having fun, then you know what? No arguments from me. But for someone who has been through the grind to a certain extent, I must say, I don't have fun doing the grind. Like after doing the same grind over and over for, over 50 hours or something at one spot, it starts becoming kind of a drag. Like honestly, who actually has fun after doing that much? It's one thing if you're making money off the game, if you're a content creator or a big streamer who's making thousands of dollars by doing it, and it does benefit a content creator like myself that more people do the grind and are part of BDO. And that, in a sense, when there's more players in the game, there's more people who watch my content, more money for me. But listen, I want to be completely candid with you guys because a lot of new players look to my guides and my videos and try to learn about the game and get into the game. So my content inducts a lot of people into BDO. So I don't want to misinform you guys on what's about to come. When you do get into the game, you love the game, but then you realize, hey, I'm getting one shot by these people even after playing the game for 6 months and I've been grinding my ass off and gearing up. When's that going to change? Never. It's never going to change. Even at 730 gear score, you're going to get one combo. Trust me. It's never going to change. Get used to that. But will you ever be able to fight back? When you have enough gear. How long does it take to get enough gear? A very long time. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use garmod.com to calculate the silver value of the gear and different gear sets, different breakpoints in the whole gearing process. This isn't going to be a completely accurate estimate because this doesn't account for the Jatina pen accessory as well as the Jatina pen armors and weapons, which does considerably cut down the cost in the initial phases of gearing up. So for that purpose, like you'll see every now and then I'll put in a Tet Tungrad because that's close to the value of a Jatina pen crescent ring. Jatina pen crescent ring costs like 11.1 or something like that, 11.1 bill. And the Jatina armors and weapons also cost considerably less than the actual armors and weapons. Honestly, I pretty much expect everyone who's making a Labreska helmet or a Fallen God armor to use a guaranteed Jatina pen to cut down on the cost. And one of either their shoes or their gloves to also be one of the guaranteed pens, because once you get to the 4th armor, it starts being more expensive than the armor piece is actually worth. for the numbers, the first Jatina Pen weapon costs 6.2 bill on NA. Approximately, it fluctuates depending on the price of materials. The first Jatina Pen armor costs 8.6. The second, the 10.6. The third, 12.6. And the fourth, we won't count because it's too expensive. So there's factors like that which are not taken into account here, and we'll just like subtract like a base amount of billions from the overall price and just wing it from there. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, the numbers really don't change all too much. So the first thing I wanted to point out is we had different gear sets that, you know, I can talk through, and you see the value of the gear go up considerably. And also when you come to the last one, I couldn't do the proper max build because the values of the Debo pen accessories are not reflected appropriately to their true value. There just haven't been enough sold on the market for the market price to fluctuate or something, and they've been like stuck at like close to 120 bill. In reality, they should be around what, a pen disto, or even more, like at 180 bill or something, or even higher than that. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but definitely not 120 bill. If you buy it for that, you've been lucky and congrats to you. But just know these numbers are not the exact ones, but it does give us a general picture, and that's what we're really going for in this video. All right, so the first thing I want to note is this game will consistently move the goalposts further and further away. What you see on my screen here is full pen Tuvala gear, and this used to be the AP and DP of soft cap many years ago, and getting to this gear point, you're like a badass. You're one of the best in the game. So honestly, the game is completely different from back then, and it'll continue to evolve, continue to change. They'll keep adding catch-up mechanics to bring the base player level up to a certain point and keep moving it up. But honestly, it's not reducing the time it takes to get to that end point considerably. The game's just going to keep changing in this manner, and it's something we just have to acknowledge. So the new soft cap, in my opinion, would actually be this. I know people would be like, yo, that's a lot of gear. How is that a soft cap? Just hear me out. Everything here you can get for a reasonable price. That is like around 20 bill max. And I even threw in like a pen Jatina crescent ring, a pen Kaposha necklace from Seasonal, a pen Kaposha ring from Seasonal, and the Labresca helmet and armor I expect you to make yourself by grinding. You can get guaranteed helmet pen, guaranteed armored pen, and you know, you can also get one more of these items as a guaranteed pen item. The Kudum, you can go the route of a guaranteed pen weapon. You know, there's a lot of things you can do here to reduce the overall cost that we see. It's not actually 300 freaking bill. You could even call it like 200 or 220 bill of actual value, and maybe even less if you got lucky. But the thing about enhancing in this game is you'll eventually balance out. You might be super lucky and get a lot of things, and you can also fail on other things like in equal amounts or greater amounts and lose money overall. So enhancement is not a thing that I can factor in. Some people are really lucky. I know one guy who hit both his Tet Distos, 0 fails, who hit 2 pen Black Stars, 0 fails. Like, that is actually cracked, and he even eventually hit a pen Ogre ring after 3 attempts. Like, there are some people who are super carried, but if they keep enhancing it, eventually the luck can turn around, and very few people are really that lucky. So I don't want to consider that as a baseline. So of the different gear builds that I've been playing with, the ones I like to take a look at is going to be one, the base where you start off, then the new soft cap, in my opinion, that is like, you know, 295 Awaken AP once I actually change this into a pen Crescent. It's just the value of a pen Tungrad ring is pretty much the same as a pen Jatina Crescent ring. And also I'd like to take a look at this one, which is like a reasonable 730 gear score almost build, where, you know, you have the big items like the pen Black Stars, but also you went pretty lenient on the other stuff. It's not too expensive. It's not going like a full pen Disto, pen Tungrad combination or anything. This is just godly expensive. So the difference here is so huge, of almost like 500 billion, almost half a trillion in difference. So this is going to be another endgame baseline I want to look at. Now, if I had to identify the 3 main builds over here, it's going to be the starting point, which is going to be full Pentavala, then the new soft cap, in my opinion, and also the 729 build, which I consider a super endgame DR build. And yeah, you can change this up, but overall, you'll see how big the numbers are, and then it won't really matter. So when you're at the new baseline, right, the amount of money you make here is actually pretty decent. Once upon a time, making 300 mil an hour was cracked. Making 500 mil an hour, you're top tier end game of the end game. But now those players are making 1.2 bill to 1.4 billion an hour. And now the old 400 mil an hour, 500 mil an hour is actually a new baseline, because anyone with this gear can make that kind of money just going to centaurs with their agris and a loot scroll. Like, it is not uncommon anymore. So let's say for a brand new player, you make 500 mil an hour. And if you're a more advanced player who actually played the game before and knows what you're doing, you can make a solid 700 to 800 mil an hour at centaurs if you're really efficient with it. Now, I know some people say, oh, it's 1 bill an hour. You got to be lucky. You need to max out your drop rate buffs, and not everyone's able to do that. So let's not consider 1 bill an hour or the amount of money you make. Okay. Let's say, let's keep it lenient. Let's say you make about 700 mil an hour. Let's meet in between almost. Okay. So when you're making about 700 mil an hour, you're making some good money. That's like a lot more than I've made in many hours of grinding that I spent over the years. So your goal is going to be to getting to this point, even if you made less than 700 mil, but by the time you reach this point, you're making that much or even more. Like, there are plenty of hours where I go to Borgs and make 850 mil an hour with the gear you see on the screen, and even less a little bit. I didn't have pen or dual god eyes over here, but it's definitely possible. So once you get to this point, let's say you're super cracked, you're playing the best class in PvE, you're just godly in terms of skill, and you're making the most amount of money possible with this gear, and say you're making 1 bill an hour all the way up till the end game gear set that I want to go for over here. I know it scales up higher and higher, and you could be making 1.2, 1.3 bill, but that's when you actually get closer to this AP and over 300 AP. But let's just be lenient and say you make 1 bill an hour from this point to this point. These are all really basic numbers. It can be skewed depending on the player's skill level, and people are skilled in various degrees, okay? So this is just for the sake of conversation. If we consider this point to be the starting point at 0 money spent, it shows here that you spent 1.6 bill. That's because I put in like some good crystals in everything. Okay, I put like the best crystals you can afford, and there's some good crystals in here. So I guess the Jin Vipers are where a lot of that money went. But let's just assume this is the start point. Even without those crystals, you're starting off here, and you can make 700 mil an hour. 700 mil an hour all the way to this point, where let's subtract the amount of money that it costs, making a guaranteed pen versus actually buying a pen. And, let's be lenient here. Let's be generous. Let's add RNG to the factor and say you saved 50 bill off this. So the overall cost spent from point 1 to point 2 is going to be 250 billion. Now, obviously, the Fallen Gods, I'd say you should make it yourself, not actually go and buy it. But the time you spent grinding for it and the money you could have, made in raw silver that went into these armors usually comes up to a bit of an even break point, right? But let's say this whole gear set costs 200 to 250 bill. Okay, so when you're grinding 700 mil an hour, how long does that take? Well, let's see. Let's give it 250 billion, right? Going at 700 million an hour. How many hours is that? A lot of fucking hours. That's 357 hours. Now let's be generous with the RNG and say, hey, you got some good RNG, and we can bring it down to 300 hours, okay? But that's still 300 fucking hours. Honestly, even if you grinded 1 bill an hour, that's still a long time to get to this point, right? Even if you spend like 200 hours to get to this point, that's a lot of fucking hours. No one can deny that. Now let's look at the end game set that I built over here. Is it ideal? Probably not. We could cut down this overall total price of 1.189 trillion down to 1 trillion. Let's just make it simple. We're pea-brains over here. And let's assume from this point all the way to this point, you make 1 bill an hour on average. Okay. Some hours you get more, some hours you get less. I've seen many people with 305, 310 AP make only 800 mil versus making 1.2 bill, 1.3 bill, depending on RNG. Let's just say overall, it's 1 bill an hour going at varying degrees of efficiency spread out throughout the year. Some days you're tired, some days you're hardcore, full sweaty, but let's just say that we have 1 trillion worth of gear. How long does that take? Well, the simple estimate is 1,000 fucking hours. That's a lot of hours. I'm not even kidding here. Like, going from this to this, even if you subtract the value of this gear, let's say the 250, and take it out from this, listen, that's still a lot of hours, over 750 hours. Then if the overall journey to this point is like close to 1,000 hours, that is a huge investment. Let's assume that you work 40 hours a week and cut out 2 weeks for PTO or something, right? That equates to about 2,000 hours. So essentially, to spend 1,000 hours to get to a certain point in this video game, you have to grind at a part-time job worth of efficiency. Like, you got to put in 4 hours a day, 5 days a week to get here in a year. Like, not kidding. That is a lot of work. You're essentially working a part-time job. I hope you have fun through that journey, because apparently it's about the journey, not the destination. But that's a long fucking journey without any actual gain. I'm sure some of you had the dream, hey, once I get 700 gear score, I'm going to start streaming, I'm going to start making money, it's going to be worth it. Well, for some people it is, but for most of us it isn't, because that's a lot of fucking effort. Now you guys must be thinking, Pansy, why are you dropping so many F-bombs? Because I did more detailed analysis of this. For this video, I had a full spreadsheet. I went from point A to point B to point C to point D and assumed different variable amounts of money that I'm making at those breakpoints and calculated the overall thing. It got really complex and there were a lot of assumptions I had to make. So for the sake of just having a simple video, I just went with the easy numbers here. Yes, I'll be the first one to tell you that these are not actual calculations. If you actually calculated, the numbers would be different. More often than not, like for the actual person to grind at this point, it's going to be a lot higher than I'm telling you in this video. Like, you guys can't ignore how much your time is worth. The point of this video wasn't to scare you guys away from the game or something. It's a great fucking game. I still play it after 2.5 years for the reason that I like the game. Like, it's a good game. It has its own niche. It's unique. And it has such good graphics. It has a great developer behind them who's actually trying to improve the game, which is really rare. I play every single MMORPG out there as they come out, and it's very rare to find a company that's actually looking to improve their product rather than try to milk us for all our money. But it is foolish to ignore that it takes 1,000 fucking hours to get to the end game. No ordinary person would want to do that. It's hard enough to get someone to try out your game, to buy it or to download it and actually get into it. Then they have to learn this complex game. There's a lot of ins and outs in BDO. It can be overwhelming for a lot of people. My first time I played it in 2016, I quit immediately after like a week because I'm like, it's too complicated. I came back like 6 months later and like, okay, let's try this out. Let's look at guides. Let's try to get into it. My friends are saying that it's a good game. So I tried it out. I had to put in a lot of effort. So an ordinary average Joe who downloads this game has to actually go through enough trials with the game being as complicated as it might be. And then you have to expect him to actually get into the grind. And then you want him to grind for 100 hours, then 200 hours, then 1,000 hours. This game is already a niche game, but when you put that kind of requirement on them, it is very hard pressed to find a player who's willing to do that and actually convert them to this in-game player and then convert them into sticking around and being an endgame PvP or something. It's slim pickings. And partially the reason is because it takes so long to get there. And it's so difficult to convert someone who's interested in the game, someone who sees it on YouTube or on Twitch and tries out the game, to convert them to be a diehard player, to stick around this long to get to the end game. Now, a lot of players do play for years without getting to the end game and don't give a damn about that. I'm one of them. Like, I am one of the players who don't care. If I've known the numbers here for a very long time. It's not new. No, anyone with like a calculator can figure this out. I play the game because it's fun. I make content on it. I make money off it. And without the content and the money, would I play as much as I do? Probably not. I'd probably be a lot more casual, right? But my situation isn't the same as many of you guys. And honestly, it's one thing if a content creator, gets on Twitch and grinds 8 hours a day. Like, at least they're getting something out of it as far as the monetary value goes. If you're not having fun on this grind, what the hell is the point, right? Now, I'm not saying this to diminish the game in any way or something. I'm not trying to scare people away. Honestly, it shouldn't take more than 3 to 4 months to get to a high-end gear point, and probably around 6 months to get hard capped in any MMORPG. When you play a game like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14, hey, you can get max geared in those time frames. But then the argument comes up in BDO, hey, at least our gear doesn't get invalidated after a few years. Is that completely true? Because if you stop playing this game for a year, then all the people you were competing against toe to toe will be much further ahead of you a year from now. Like, if someone played this game like a part-time job for a year, they're going to be way ahead of you. So you will fall behind. It is true this game doesn't completely invalidate your gear, but the goalpost is it's just going to keep moving forward and you will eventually fall behind. So it is a different game. You can't compare it directly. Honestly, I would like to see this game to be a mainstream game someday, but as long as this hurdle is there, I don't think it ever can. Anyway, it's not often I make like a negative video in a sense. I'm not trying to like trash anyone for being a part of the grind. I actually respect you. I don't have the patience that you do, and you're a better player in BDO than me. But listen, I do want this game to grow. I do want to see more players on it. And as long as this remains the same, I don't think it'll ever get to that point. And as long as this remains the same, I don't think it ever is going to get to that point. I wish it does change and I wish it does become more popular. But hey, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I know this was a negative take. A lot of people who did go through this grind would be like, hey, you suck. But it is what it is. I just had to say it. I talk about this on my stream all the time. Check me out at twitch.tv/I'mPansy. Drop me a comment, a follow, and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Take it easy. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.